Hi guys, this is Mentor Chris with the Trading Dojo, and today I'll be covering drawn liquidity and specifically how it works with the silver bullet hour. So instead of trying to predict the overall day and what it's going to do, we're going to react based off where's price at during our silver bullet hour and how can we find a trade there. So most of the time people are teaching drawn liquidity on the higher time frame. I want to go on a more intraday level. The 30-minute, 15-minute, we're going to look there and see how can we develop a bias off of that. How somebody might look at drawn liquidity normally would be a previous day high or a previous day low right here. Whereas I'm just going to look at where is the 1 hour headed to, where is it delivering to, and what kind of factors are we going to consider on our way there. And this is the same mindset that got me to several million in funding. And I know if you implement this into your trading, it will help you too. So on a day where we would have 8:30 news, I like to see if we create any wicks during that news. So that news, let's say on this day would have been 8:30. So we created two wicks on both sides. We have a lower wick and a higher wick. Now, I'm overall more bullish on indices right now. So regardless, I'm looking for a long setup. But before we take a trade, we actually want one side or the other side to be taken. So preferably the lower side, which we sweep it right here, because either wick is going to act as our draw. So if we take one side, we're likely to target the other side. This is because we're going to have a lot of leftover orders. There's going to be a lot of liquidity stored at those highs. So we want to focus on how can we position ourselves to target those highs. So in this scenario, like I said, we're waiting for a silver bullet hour. So we're going to look around that time past equity open, which is 9:30. We're going to look at what supporting factors do we have for our drawn liquidity. So we already determined that this high is our drawn liquidity. We swept this side, so it's safe to assume we'll trade up to this side, right? So looking at the hourly, we have this hourly fair value gap. I'll just leave it as a black box and kind of going down to the lower time frame. So all we're looking for past about 950, about 940, you could take a trade. But yeah, around this 950 macro, all we're looking for is once we've determined that drawn liquidity, we've determined that we're safe, like we're not going to trade any lower. We're going to look for a market structure shift. That would be right here. And then we're going to target that drawn liquidity up here. Okay, so this isn't so much for entries. This is just how I would play out a trade. Essentially setting ourselves up where we're safe, which would be right here because we swept this low. We're already at our silver bullet time, so we're likely to sweep one side and then just run the other side, which was that data high that we're targeting. And you could see kind of chops around, but we do eventually hit that drawn liquidity right there. So some other scenarios we might see if we're not in a bullish overall bias, we might see us trade up higher to this high, and then we leave the other side open, which is this wick, and then we trade lower to that side. So it just kind of depends on the overall conditions, but just knowing that drawn liquidity, it's kind of easy right now. We have a mainly bullish bias because we're at all-time highs on ES. So we're just looking for a bullish setup. And so that was setup number 1. Now I'll go on to number 2. Now going on to our third drawn liquidity, it's going to be session liquidity. So on any given day on indices, if we leave it untouched, this is a possible scenario where we'll trade back to it. So if you look at any other day, let's say over here on Tuesday, on Wednesday, or sorry, Thursday, we come up and we actually sweep it almost every time. We're going to come up and sweep it some way or another. So if we open up and we're still on a more bullish bias because we're at all-time highs, but we left that Asia session, well, we're probably going to come back to it. Say we wanted to short, we would have wanted to see that it was already swept, so then we could trade lower. But we didn't see a sweep, so we have no reason to be bearish. When we leave this is kind of like the market hinting at us, tilting its hand towards us, and we could find a way to actually use that as our draw on liquidity, as well as this London high being left open, but particularly Asia, we want to see us sweep that, and we haven't. Well, we're probably going to come back to it. So kind of the same idea. We're waiting for that hourly silver bullet, which is going to be, we're good to trade after 940. So we already came down, we swept some of these lows, and we could see that we actually are close to creating a market structure shift. So right there, if we go a little deeper, yeah, we actually do create a market structure shift. So we did have 10 a.m. news right here. However, we are still respecting the IFEG. So probably put our stop right there, and we could target that high. And we trade straight through it. So just remember, if Asia has not been taken, it's likely that we're going to come back and take it. And given the overall bias, which was remaining bullish because of our all-time highs, we were still respecting the hourly fair value gap right here. You have to consider that. And what we had talked about before, this one's not so pronounced, but we do still have a data high right here. So factoring all those things in, we really had no reason to be bearish right here. And this is really the setups you want to see. You want to see us have so many factors that are bullish that you're not even considering going short. You don't want to have a two-sided bias, because as ICT says, that's a lower probability setup. You want everything to be one-sided.